Jody was 22 years old when she was alone with her 3-year-old daughter Holly. Her husband, who had given almost no help to his wife and daughter, was sent to prison. After that, the mother-in-law kicked Jody and the baby out on the street. Jody rented the cheapest apartment and could hardly make ends meet. There was barely enough money for rent, a kindergarten for Holly, and the cheapest food and clothes. And then suddenly, Peter came into their lives. He lived next door and saw that the lonely and life-tortured woman was literally surviving with a baby in her arms. He felt sorry for her and began to help her little by little. Sometimes he bought them groceries or some toys and clothes for Holly. Sometimes he helped repair what he could. Jody was grateful for his help. Gradually, they became friends, and the woman began to trust her kind neighbour. Soon their friendship grew into a romantic relationship, and 2 years later they were married and became family. From childhood, Holly was aware that Peter was not her real father, but for some reason she immediately began to call him Daddy, and not without reason. Jody was a strict mother and often punished Holly for any misdeeds and antics. Peter was the opposite of her. He was gentle and kind by nature and never crossed his wife. But at the same time, he pampered little Holly and always stood up for her. Even at the park or at the movies, on the weekends, Holly used to go with Peter because Jody was always out of time. Peter was a welder at a manufacturing company. He had a good salary and overall they lived well and hardly needed anything. A little over 10 years went by and tragedy came to the family. Peter had a stroke. At the hospital they literally brought him back from the dead, treated him and sent him home. But that cheerful, happy Peter was gone. In addition, he could hardly move his arm, spoke poorly, rarely got up from his bed, and could only walk along a wall. Jody became the sole breadwinner in the family, and 15-year-old Holly had to become her father's primary caregiver. The girl was growing up smart and already understood everything. She rarely went out with her friends, and immediately after school she usually rushed home because it was necessary to help her father. In the evenings, Jody replaced her daughter at Peter's bedside, but she did so less and less willingly. As time passed, Holly began to notice her mother's delays at work, her evening absences on some far-fetched occasions. And one night, Jody called and said that she was in a deadline at work and would be doing reports all night. But Holly was sure there were not any deadlines. She'd seen her mother come home several times by unfamiliar fancy car. A few weeks later, Jody confessed to Holly that she had another man, and he had asked her to move in with him. "Holly, he has his own business and makes a good living. He also lives in a big house where you and I will be very comfortable too." "Holly, don't look at me like that. I'm a normal woman in the prime of her life, and I don't want to live with a man with a disability anymore. I'm sorry, but I'm going to file for divorce, and I'm leaving tomorrow. You're all grown up now, and you can choose whether you stay with Peter or with me." Holly pondered her mother's suggestion in silence for a while, and then said that she would stay with her father. Jody tried for a long time to convince her that she was acting irrational, but then she gave up and packed her things and left. Of course, Jody was not the kind of mother who abandoned her children to their fate. She visited her daughter every 2 days, bought groceries and things for her, and left money for expenses. But she herself was living where she was happy. Peter greeted Jody's departure with no emotion. Maybe he had already guessed something like that, or perhaps he had just realized that he could give nothing to a healthy and beautiful woman. As time went on, Peter's speech became clearer. He regained the ability to move his arm, and he began to walk outside on his own. Holly was studying hard and managed to get into medical school. She decided to tie her life to the medical profession and become a rehabilitation therapist. The girl promised herself that she would never leave her father under any circumstances. As it turned out, a child's heart remembers kindness and love longer than an adult's. When Holly had been a little girl, her father used to take her to the park, and now, many years later, it was her turn to take him there. Holly watches with hope and joy as her ailing father becomes more and more alive each day. She still has a long way ahead of her before she becomes a doctor, but she's already practically got her first patient back on his feet. But in this case, the main cure was not pharmacy remedies, but the daughter's love for her father.